The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Mark. Glory to you, Lord Christ. The apostles gathered around Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. He said to them, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest for a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a deserted place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they hurried there on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. And as he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. When they had crossed over, they came to the land at Gennesaret and moored the boat. When they got out of the boat, people at once recognized him and rushed about that whole region and began to bring the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into the villages or cities or farms, they laid the sick in the marketplaces, and they begged him that they might touch even the fringe of his cloak, and all who touched him were healed. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Christ. Please be seated. After a few weeks away, it is really good to be back with you all here at St. Andrew's. Now, I want to do something, and I promise it's not a prank. I want you to close your eyes. Nothing's going to happen. No scary things will pop out. I'm not going to disappear, I promise. No prank. Just close your eyes for a moment. Now, I want you to think about what comes to mind when I tell you I want you to have a conversation with God. What does that space look like? What images come to mind? What do you feel in your body? I'll let you sit there for a minute and think about that. All right, you can open your eyes. So what did come to mind for you? What did you feel inside of yourself? Perhaps there was a scripture passage that came to mind. Perhaps you were thinking of the still waters of Psalm 23 or a beautiful ocean or mountainscape from your most recent vacation. Perhaps it was a calm, restful experience that you wish I wouldn't have ended so early. Or your experience might have been a little different. When you closed your eyes, you might have begun to feel a sense of disease. And then I talked about talking to God, and it got really uncomfortable. Perhaps the image that came to mind was an empty room or a waiting room where no one actually shows up. Perhaps the feeling in your soul was one of discomfort, one of abandonment, one of loneliness. Maybe even one of guilt because you feel like you should have been doing this yesterday, but you know you didn't. Perhaps you didn't feel worthy to be in that space. Perhaps you might have even felt a need to filter yourself, to make apologies. What came to mind when you think about engaging in conversation with God? There's one theologian who writes that the most important thing about us is what we think about when we think about God. Now, I know many of us might disagree with that, but hang on for just a second. What you think about when you think about God is the most important thing about you. So what did you think about? I don't think I will be the first to tell you that what we think about in our head, what we know in our head, perhaps what we've heard taught Sunday after Sunday, what we sat through in Sunday school as a child, what we know in our head to be true about God might not be that thing which comes to mind when we think about God. It might not be what you experienced in those moments of silence. We know that the distance between the head and the heart, the distance between our knowledge and our lived experience and what we feel in our body, though only a small distance, can be one of the most challenging connections to make. I know I've experienced this in my own life when I have conversations with friends or with spiritual companions, and I'm lamenting or talking about my experience, the dissonance that I feel, and a friend will quickly say, do you really think God is like that? Because you're telling me that God is distant, that God isn't listening, that God isn't near. Is that really true? I remember leading a group discussion in a church in Washington, D.C., and I gave everyone a little piece of homework. Go away, we're going to have a prayer practice, and I want you to just throughout your week, pretend like God is right next to you, always ready to give a lending ear, ready to listen to anything you have to say. And these people who are participating in this group discussion, these were like the church people, right? You know, the ones that come to everything, the ones that have the right answer, the ones that seem to have it all together. So they came back the next week. I asked them how it went, and they were silent. One finally sheepishly admitted that it was hard. And what she named was, I feel guilty talking to God, expecting God to listen to me, when there is so much hurt everywhere else. My experience seems minuscule. Why do I need to take up some of God's attention when my neighbor is hurting? What image comes to mind when you think about God? Our gospel reading today, we're offered an interesting picture of Jesus. This passage is a bit of a weird one. It's kind of one you might easily look over. It's a skip-over passage. It's a throwaway passage. It's actually two passages, and there's a story in the middle that we just completely cut out. This section of Scripture is surrounded by the big stories, the stories that we have paintings of, right? It begins earlier in Mark chapter 6, where Jesus sends out his 12 disciples, his closest companions, those guys that have been following him around for a while. He sends them out to go do what he's been doing. He teaches them out to teach, to heal, to anoint, to be with people on their own. They go out 2 by 2, and they're not even allowed to take anything with them. Then, immediately after they're sent, those of you who were with us last week might recall that we get another big story. John the Baptist is beheaded. And it's then after that we get the first section of today's reading, that first paragraph. The disciples come back, and then that crowd becomes the 5,000 that get fed with the loaves and the fish. And then Jesus walks on water. And then finally, we get the last part of our passage. So really, if you were reading this straight through, this wouldn't be something to pay much attention to. It doesn't even get a painting. But I'm curious, if it were to be painted, what exactly would it look like? What image of Jesus would we get if we lingered with this passage, if it was represented in a piece of fine art hanging in a museum? How might that image, that painting, impact how we think about God? Well, I think we should pay attention to it. And perhaps someone will be inspired to paint. I don't know. I told you earlier, we get the disciples as they are returning. Now, I know we think of the disciples as like the all-around good guys. They were, after all, the 12 chosen ones. But I know there's a lot of educators in this room, and that is not my background. But I think we all know from our lived experience, everyone is not an A-plus student, right? We have bell curves. There's a lot of C's, maybe even some students who are failing. So to think that these disciples were sent out, that they got it all right, so that they were essentially Jesus, I don't think that was the case. So here they are. They've come back. They've been away from their teacher. They want to show and tell about all that they have learned, all that they have experienced. I imagine there was excitement, there was joy, there was eagerness, there was delight in being back. And I think there was probably some other emotions going on. There might have been some hesitancy, some doubts about what I just experienced out there didn't match up with what you told me was going to happen, Jesus. There might have been some wounds, some pain acquired along the way. I'm sure there is certainly disappointment. And it's there as the disciples are talking to Jesus, laying out their whole experience before him. Jesus extends this simple invitation. Come away to a deserted place all by yourself and rest a while. Now, listen to what Jesus didn't say. Jesus didn't jump into a lesson plan, right? He didn't say, okay, well, here's what you need to do next time when that demon isn't coming out. Jesus didn't go into correction mode. Jesus didn't even go into the psychology of, and how did that make you feel, right? He doesn't even ask them to go out and do it again to show an improvement plan, right? No. Jesus, after hearing all that they have to say, after hearing their whole experience, Jesus offers rest, offers solitude, offers a space for reflection, a space to remember that regardless of their success, regardless of their output, that they are still in relationship, that what they put out, their success does not define them. After describing it all, Jesus offers a space where they are solely defined by their relationship to Jesus, in that space of rest. And this is important. Note, it is rest that isn't given as a reward. It's rest that is unearned. It's rest that's given to all of the disciples, regardless of how successful they were. The expectation is connection to Jesus. You might have caught earlier this spring, there was a New York Times article floating around, and it came up in like all sorts of Facebook and Instagram posts and things like that. But there's a psychologist, Adam Grant, well known, and Adam wrote a piece in the Times where he identified the predominant experienced emotion of 2021, the year in which we are living, the year of our Lord, 2021, as, does anyone know? As languishing. So the predominant felt emotion of 2021 predicted to be languishing. Now, he makes clear this isn't depression. It actually looks quite different than depression. It's somewhere in between the realm of depression and flourishing. It's there in the middle that we find languishing. Describes it as a sense of emptiness, as a fog, as a time of not only diminished joy, but diminished desire, a sense of aimlessness, and perhaps that general feeling of blah that we have all been living with for quite some time. Does that sound familiar to anyone? In a year where we are still very much feeling and living with and sorting through what it looks like to live in the midst of a pandemic, and even in the aftermath, languishing is what our common emotion has been described as. So perhaps with this in mind, we should lean in a little more closely to Jesus' invitation and actually, then again, take him up on it, right? Not as another thing to put on our list, another thing that we have to accomplish, but as a way we can recover our weary souls. Now, I think that crowd knew something about this. That crowd that was chasing after Jesus, the crowd that in the Gospel of Mark just like pops up everywhere, is kind of like a flash mob doing dance scenes. These crowds follow Jesus everywhere in Mark's Gospel. And it's kind of comical in today's reading because the disciples and Jesus are trying to escape them. They're trying to flee to get some rest. So they get in a boat. And the crowds literally like run around the lake to go meet them before they even get there. I think these crowds probably knew something about desperation, knew something about languishing, because it's reflected in their eagerness to pursue Jesus. And what does Jesus do? It's a little surprising, right? He invites the disciples on this personal retreat, and then they're bombarded with people. But instead of sending that crowd away, instead of saying, well, the wait time is 90 minutes, here's your buzzer, you can go wait outside with a beer. Instead of saying you did not pre-register, you did not pre-order, there is no space for you, Jesus invites them into the retreat. Jesus invites them into the deserted place. There's no shortage of Jesus. There's no shortage of grace. There's no shortage of mercy. There's no shortage of rest. It's there in that invitation, being invited in, that we see that it's not just the inner circle, right? It's not just the disciples who have been invited into this rest. It's just not the people who have it all together, who feel the right things, who say the right things, who have that special connection with Jesus, right? Everyone, the entire crowd, no exceptions, are invited into that rest, are invited into that relationship. There's absolutely no scarcity, no limit to be found here with Jesus. So perhaps it might actually be true that God not only loves us, but likes us. and wants to be around us. Friends, I know you probably, many of you, disagree with this idea that what you think about when you think about God is the most important thing about you. But I hope you will hear the kernel of truth that comes in that statement, right? Because it reflects, it reveals what we are oriented towards. What I think about when I think about God gets past my head knowledge and moves into my body, into my heart, into my experience. It delves into my expectations. It acknowledges the roadblocks that I put in place with how I approach God. Today, that throwaway passage, that passage with no painting, I think that is an invitation to confront all of these false ideas of God that we've been carrying, these ideas that state that we have to have it together, we have to present a clean, filtered person, we have to be worthy, we have to earn it, we have to do the right things, we have to go at the right time. All of these things we can set aside. To all of these things, Jesus speaks that same invitation. Come away to a deserted place all by yourself and rest for a while. So do that. I invite you to tell your whole story. Let it all hang out. Hold nothing back. Trust that nothing you reveal isn't already known, but also, even more than that, won't scare God away. The invitation will not be removed. There's enough of this God to go around. You're not taking up God's time, distracting God from what he needs to do next door. No. This God is always ready to listen, is always ready to embrace you, to welcome you in. So as we go out this week, perhaps we can learn and do a practice of noticing our breath. And with each inhalation, recall the idea, come away with me, and exhale to a place of rest. Amen.